So Dragon Ball Daima has just concluded, and today we're doing another anime manga review episode, as it has been a while since I've made one. If you are new to the channel and are unaware of what these episodes entail, they are an unscripted discussion and review on the series and my feelings and thoughts on it, and it is basically way less in-depth as my scripted analysis videos. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Now, I do really enjoy the premise of Daima. I really like how we go all the way back to Z and the aftermath of the Buu saga, and have Dabura's death kind of matter and be the opening doors of the series, with Goma wanting to be the Demon King. And when watching Z Fighters go through the Buu saga, and speaking of those scenes, we do need a Dragon Ball Z remake. I'm sure a lot of people have said it. It is not a very unpopular take and whatnot. Daima is the best made production-wise of the Dragon Ball series. And I don't really think there's going to be much people arguing that. You can see how it looks aesthetically, visuals, and animation. You go for any fights, Goku vs. Glory, the Tamagami fights, the Goma fights. It looks absolutely mesmerizing. Even if I have a lot of my issues in the finale, the fight looks insanely good. And I actually just have to admit, it probably looks better than most of the things in Dragon Ball. Easily. If only Super could look this good and be this great in terms of production. But hey. But I do feel like Daima does resort a lot to nostalgia, especially with, them turning into kids, Kid Goku, Power Pole, and all these kind of things. It does feel like a lot of times they're trying to tell you, hey, remember this, and then you get this scene, that thing. And not to mention, we did get that one interview where it was revealed that Daima was catering to the GT fans, as I remember. I'm not 100% sure on that. So it's not too surprising that the show is the way it is, and especially what we got at the end that we'll talk about, the big thing. And honestly, I did enjoy Goma and Degasu's dynamic at the start. They did remind me a lot of the Pilaf gang. And although I'm not huge on the Pilaf gang from the first arc of Dragon Ball, they have been a lot better in Super and just kind of like the random hijinks. So when they become, or especially Goma becomes the main villain and the main boss, it does kind of come off as weird, as I don't really feel like the build-up and the established kind of role that he was in gave him the vibe as a main final villain. He was kind of that little comedic relief goofball complaining and whining about trying to get the Dragon Balls or trying to prevent them from getting to the Dragon Balls. Kind of like how Pilaf was like in the beginning of Dragon Ball, basically. So when he became the final villain, I kind of wasn't really much interested in it because it wasn't really built up that well, honestly. So maybe they could have had another kind of fight or maybe another kind of villain. I'm not really sure, but I just don't feel like the way they set up Goma worked super well as a main villain. And Degasu, he's kind of actually a lot worse off because he does kind of feel like a bit pointless. He hasn't really been able to do much, and his small little role, I guess, when he tried to kidnap Dende was very short-lived, and it does make you wonder why he was really there. I do think he's fun to watch with Goma, seeing how their dynamic is like. I really wish they did a lot more with Degasu. Now, speaking of certain goofy scenes, how is the comedy in Daima? I would say the comedy is actually pretty nice in the series. There's a couple of jokes and characters that really are fun, and I really do feel like they bring out the best of Toriyama's comedy. For example, Majin Ku, Majin Du. Some of the scenes, for example, when Neva talks about how Namekians should never use their power for bad and be evil, and then everybody just looks at Piccolo and he's just kind of confused at why everyone's looking at him. I just love that scene. It just shows how no one forgot the shit Piccolo was getting to when he was naming Piccolo and Piccolo Jr. And I really like Hibis's character as a whole. I mean, you see how that man just does not really give a shit. He just says whatever's in his mind. He was hitting on Bulma in front of Vegeta, and, he didn't care if she was married, and he was just shit-talking Vegeta, calling him an arrogant king, and his hair was weird. Hibis is a very fun character to watch, especially because he had the third eye, and he randomly traded it for a hat. And you could kind of say he caused everything, because he just randomly threw it away. But that's just how Hibis is. I mean, he even saved Dende, because he just threw his hat to Degasu. Vegeta and Bulma's moments, although they're very short, and you can probably count the amount of them on your fingers, they are one of my favorite parts of Daima. Especially seeing how much Vegeta cares about Bulma. He's not gonna let Hibis just take his wife. And there's this one scene when Bulma tells Vegeta he can just go back to being an adult by himself. Vegeta tells her no, they're just gonna be both adults again together. And I really like those moments. You just see that those two are an amazing relationship. And I mean, the bath scene that everyone has seen on Twitter and all these other social media sites. It is the highlight of the series, especially seeing how Vegeta is such a wife guy, and he cares so much about Bulma, and she just has somehow, I don't know how she tamed him. I mean, you see how he was in the Saiyan Saga, Namek Saga, and Bulma could just somehow stop a Saiyan from fighting by just saying what she said. And I mean, the GOAT, the greatest in the series, Majin Ku, absolutely my favorite part in the series. He is such a good and fun character to me. And it's funny because when he got announced, a lot of people were not a fan of him. And I could kind of see why. I did dig the design. It kind of just looked goofy and funny, especially because when you really break down, Dragon Ball Z villains, I mean, Kid Buu kind of just looks very simple, and he looks a bit, very simple and tiny. I didn't really mind the design and the way he looked, and people assumed he was the final villain of the series, but we got something way better, and him being this goofball comedy relief character of him just fucking around, fighting the Tamagamis, and losing, and admitting loss. And this guy just loves life. You can see he just enjoys being there, and he is very confident in his other abilities. And Majin is a great addition to complement Ku and his character. Just seeing these two in their relationship and sibling dynamic, as well as their relationship to Rinsu, it's just awesome. I don't have a lot of words to say about it, but if you've seen the series, you'll see how great Ku and Du are. And, especially seeing how Ku fights, or how Du fights Tamagami 1, seeing how he slowly learns fighting through his fight with Tamagami 1. And I really like how Du pretends he has Super Saiyan 3 and just starts fighting with Goku against Goma. I think those two really just highlight the best parts of the series, the comedy and everything. And we'll talk about it later in the video, the finale, the way Ku goes out. Awesome. Now, let's talk a bit about the negative aspects of the series. The repetitive story beats. Planes constantly crashing, constantly resorting to fighting minions, such as the beginning, the midway point, the later points. I have a problem with it just because of how little we have of the series. And I enjoy filler episodes. I mean, there are great filler episodes in Z, in Super. They're very entertaining. I mean, you have the driving episode in Z, you have the Pan learning how to fly episode. I think those are cool, but you have a lot of time because Z has like 200 episodes and Super has about 130 episodes. You only have 20 episodes here, so we only have these random filler episodes and not really much happens, and I don't find them to be as entertaining as, Z's filler or Super's filler. I think it's a waste of time, especially, for example, the Giant Planet. We kind of wasted an episode there where we could have used it for something else. It's not really an unpopular take. And for Glorio and Pansy, I think they're pretty decent in how they mesh well with the group, but I do have my issues with Glorio's character and his double agent role. I don't really think it's executed super well. It does have a good moment at the end when he wishes everybody to turn back to adults, but I feel like we should have gotten more on Arinsu and her character to make Arinsu's development hit harder and Glorio's betrayal hit harder. We don't really know much about Arinsu and Glorio's relationship, what Arinsu did for Glorio, how Arinsu was like, to see her change. Because we see the change and we see that she stops being this, overlord or trying to become the Demon King as much as she would try to refuse it. We don't really know much about her, so it doesn't hit as much as I think it should have been. But it still is a good scene, and I really like Goku getting Glorio's name right to tie the knot to that whole character arc. So it does have its positives. I think it's a decent scene. And we did talk about Degusu and how he's kind of wasted and does not really have much of a point. And I'm not exactly sure how to feel about Supreme Kai's significance in Daima. He is decent in it, and he is basically, the person to lorddom to you on certain things. For example, how the Supreme Kais are formed, or the universe and how it was formed with Rhymus and all that. But I feel like we could have had a bit more with Supreme Kai, especially because he's in the poster and he's supposed to be the secondary protagonist alongside Goku in this spin-off, or whatever you want to call Daima. And Daima does kind of make the Dabura interesting. He is a minor character, but I'm sure a lot of people did hope that there was more with Dabura in Z. He was established as the Demon King and looked like he was a very threatening force. He did fight against Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and basically did overpower him, from what I remember, due to Gohan not having enough power as opposed to the Cell Saga version. And then he kind of got one-shot by Buu and never be seen again, right? But in Daima, we actually get more insight to Dabura in the demon world, seeing what he did and how he tried to get rid of the third eye to take the sword from his dad, rather than use it for himself. I mean, obviously, we all wondered why Dabura didn't just use the third eye for himself, but it's clear that he didn't really care about it because his goal was to just take the throne and become king, and that's what happened. And honestly, when you think about the ending, I think it's so funny because when you look at the flashbacks, you notice that he doesn't actually have the cape, because the cape signifies you being the Supreme King, and that's what Ku gets at the very end. And the funny shit about that is when that got leaked of Ku with the cape, pretty sure a lot of people assumed he was gonna absorb somebody or just, absorb Goma or whatever. But the fact that that's actually the reveal of that design is the best thing ever about Daima. I was just laughing about that because I would have never expected that the cape signifies that you're literally the Demon King. It's not just an aesthetic, it's literally just telling people that you're the Demon King. So that's probably why, that's exactly why Dabura didn't have it in the flashbacks, but he had it in Z. But let's open the can of worms for a little bit. The retcons, and the weird things that happen in Daima that a lot of people discuss. For example, the Batara thing. Honestly, I don't think the Batara thing is a big deal. It is weird because, we had in Super where they told us that they split using the Dragon Balls, and now here they're telling us it was because of Boo. Yes, it is a weird retcon, but it doesn't actually affect Daima's story overall. But it's not as bad as Piccolo forgetting the Namekian, honestly, especially when you account for the 23rd World Tournament, when both Kami and Piccolo were talking in Namekian to each other. It does feel weird, especially when you account for the fact that Piccolo has fused with Kami, and I don't really think Kami forgot the language. So I do believe the reason they did this is just so Neva would join them, because without Neva they can't use the Dragon Balls because they need the Namekian language, and for the whole Super Saiyan 4 transformation, but even that doesn't have a purpose after today's episode, which we'll get into once we get to it. Ku and Du, they are my favorite parts of the series. I really enjoy how they're like, and their sibling dynamic. I've been just glazing Majin Ku, but he is actually the funniest character in the series, and not just because of how he is, but just the reception he had in the beginning. Everyone assumed he was going to be the final villain, and he just turned out to be the comedic relief that everybody adores. I knew from the first fight he got with Tamagami 1, I knew he was just going to be awesome. Just seeing his goofiness and his stupid shit that he did, and just seeing that he really enjoys life, and seeing his relationship with Du, I think is a great addition. Seeing that sibling dynamic and their relationship to Rinsu, I think is pretty sick. Seeing them just kind of fuck around, and honestly, that one scene when they were getting chocolate at the convenience store and just seeing Bootleg Ginyu Force giving them chocolate. Very cool stuff. Ku and Du are the best parts of Daima. And I really like Du's scene of just pretending to have Super Saiyan 3 and just starts fighting with Goku against Goma. And Majin Ku does actually assist the characters a lot, even if it's not with fighting. I mean, hey, when they were done with Tamagami 1 and they had a mathematics problem, Ku was the one that saved them from that issue. And it is just great. It's very refreshing to see a character that wasn't really a fighter in the series, but he offered a lot in terms of that progression. I mean, it's not like the biggest thing ever, it's just mathematics, but it's nice to see that he actually does something. And the one thing we should also talk about is the lore of Dragon Ball. Like, how well does it hold up? We get a lot about, the Supreme Kai's origins. It's pretty interesting to know about how they came to be, but, stuff like Raimus didn't really amount to much. It was just kind of a thing they mentioned, but I guess it's just to tell us more about Supreme Kai and his upbringing and what happened and how he came to be. So I don't think it's like the worst thing ever, but it's just kind of like, there's not really a point to it. And I mean, I feel bad for Piccolo, man. He didn't even notice Rinsu grabbing Majin Buu's parts. But obviously the answer is, it didn't exist at the time, but it just kind of makes it silly that Piccolo wasn't able to notice it with his hearing. But to be fair, Piccolo's hearing has always been fucking inconsistent in Dragon Ball. He wasn't even able to hear Buu's parts when he was just going around trying to absorb him and Gotenks, so I can't even give it a fault to Daima. Piccolo's hearing has always just been inconsistent and only for convenience sake. And one thing I really enjoy about Daima is the fact that Super Saiyan 1 and 2 did matter again after decades of them not being relevant. I mean, you could say that Caulifla and Kale make it relevant because they do fight in 1 and 2, and Kefla and all this, but in Super you have Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue, Blue Kaioken, and Ultra Instinct. Evolution, Blue Vegeta, Ego, all these different forms. So going back to the roots of the Super Saiyan form, I found it to be really enjoyable. Seeing Goku vs. Glorio, Goku vs. Tamagami 3, those fights are very entertaining, animated well, and I really enjoy them a lot. We did mention them a slight bit, the Gendarmerie Force, aka the Bootleg Ginyu Force. I really wish they actually had a lot more, man. They were really funny and fun to watch, but they were very much wasted. I feel like they should have had like a fight with Kadan, Pansy's father, just to give them a little bit, because they had a scene and then they just got absolutely one-shot by Vegeta, and I found it to be very disappointing, because they were very fun to watch. Now let's open up a can of worms. Super Saiyan 3 Daima Vegeta. What are my thoughts on him? Honestly, bit unsure. I do actually enjoy him. I think he's very entertaining. As Vegeta is my favorite character, I am very happy to see him getting Super Saiyan 3. But I feel like parts of it do have some issues. It's not as bad as the other form we'll go into in a bit, but at least Super Saiyan 3 was an established form in Z, and I do also think that Super Saiyan 3 was never really a form that made a ton of sense anyway. I mean, when you read the original manga and see when Super Saiyan 3 got revealed, it is very clear it was just kind of done on the spot, and as we know with how Toriyama writes Dragon Ball, it was a week-by-week thing, because I might pull this up on the screen right here, I'm not sure when I edit it. Goku was clearly saying that he gave it his all against Vegeta, and as we know later, he reveals that he has Super Saiyan 3, so that form does have its faults. I do really like it. It does have an explanation about how Goku trained for 7 years in the other world to actually get it. I know that Gotenks does get it, but he is a fusion, and you can just kind of say fusion bullshit. So Vegeta kind of getting it like that a year later, it does kind of feel weird, because Goku had to train so much, and Vegeta just kind of gets it like a year later, because I'm pretty sure that Daima happens a year after the Buu Saga. But it's not like egregious or terrible. I think it's enjoyable, and I do like it. But I feel like there probably was a better way to handle it, I guess. And I think his fight with Tamagami 2 is very fun, very entertaining. And we can see where Vegito got his moves, with Vegeta just fighting with his arms crossed and all that. But these transformations do bring a point to me about the state of modern Dragon Ball. And it's just the abundance of these transformations and the obsession that we have to get transformations every installment or every arc. Because transformations for the sake of them is not really a good idea. And we'll get into it with Super Saiyan 4 in a sec. But I did mention this a little bit in the short. I didn't really go too much in detail because it's just a short. But for example, when you go through Dragon Ball, you'll see that these transformations did mean or signify something specifically. For example, Super Saiyan and Namek was essentially Goku embracing his Saiyan heritage. Throughout the arc, you can see Goku finally embracing himself as a Saiyan, and I think Super Saiyan basically shows that, especially with his change of attitude and how he fights against Frieza. Especially the build-up with the legendary Super Saiyan and Vegeta constantly bringing it up, it was done very well. An iconic moment throughout anime and honest just animation in general. And Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, just encapsulating all of his rage and the whole build-up we've had throughout Z in one transformation, which is Super Saiyan 2, and having all his rage burst out in that transformation, and him just fighting against Cell for everything he's done to him. Also very well done. I mean, Super Saiyan 3, we just talked about how it doesn't really have a specific meaning. And if we go to Super, Ultra Ego does show Vegeta's training as a god of destruction, and basically giving him his own unique touch, and kind of an opposite to Ultra Instinct. You know, Ultra Instinct needs to dodge, and Vegeta needs to take hits. Even Ultra Instinct itself was basically foreshadowed. So I don't really give minus points for those two transformations. I think those were very good. But when you look at, for example, Super Saiyan 4, it's pretty bad. I'm not really a fan of it. I think the last fight in the series does hurt the show a lot. It does feel like a lot of random bullshit happens. And as I said earlier in the video, Goma just becoming the final villain does not really sit well with me, because he was just basically the Pilaf gang. And if they were taken too seriously, like, just imagine if the Pilaf gang just suddenly were the final villain of Dragon Ball. It would feel very weird, because they were established to be the comedic relief characters. You can change the comedy relief character to be the main villain, but we didn't have that established in the series. We didn't get that build-up. Goma was just basically the comedic relief character. He was having those goofy moments with Degasu, and those big expressions, those kind of cartoonish faces. And all of a sudden, he's the final villain. I hope that makes sense. If not, feel free to drop comments, as I'm very interested to see how others feel about this, because I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it. Now, for the big thing that people talk about a lot when it comes to Dragon Ball is hype versus writing. A lot of people do try to push this notion that Dragon Ball does not have writing and it's just about fights. I don't agree with this notion at all. I think Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are very well written, and it has a cohesive story, and it tells the story through the fighting. The arcs would not be as good and as entertaining without the writing. Seeing, you know, the Goku and DKP arc, the Red Ribbon Army saga, Saiyan saga, Namek saga, all that build-up, Goku's character development, yes, he does have it. Goku does go through a journey of maturity. It is very clear shown, for example, seeing how Goku is as a kid, seeing Goku in the 20th World Tournament, caring more about his pride as a warrior and wanting to spare Piccolo, as opposed to how he was as a kid, seeing his character in the Saiyan saga, seeing his arc about forgiving people. There's a lot to Goku. I do not agree with the notion that Goku does not have character. It is very subtle, and I want to say that could be a video on its own. And the hype factor, the whole hype and aura moments. If you enjoy that stuff, all power to you. I think that is perfectly fine, and if you do, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. The notion that if you only care about action is something to be ashamed of, I don't really agree with that. The only problem really is when you try to belittle something for what it isn't, if that makes sense. You know, you can see people that enjoy it for the hype and kind of downplay another thing, saying that maybe it's not as written well and all that kind of thing. We are going a bit on a tangent, but it is very relevant to Daima, because this is a big discussion on, you know, the finale and the whole Super Saiyan 4 transformation. But to me, in my opinion, I think both coexist. I think writing makes hype cool as shit. Super Saiyan Goku is one of the best things in Dragon Ball because of the writing. I don't think in a vacuum Super Saiyan Goku, personally to me, would be as exciting as it is, or Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, or the action between Goku and Frieza under build-up, seeing how those two are complete opposites in their character. Like, I think writing and hype coexist and makes things so much better, and I wish people would realize that. Like, you know, I made a video on Gojo and his relationship to Toji. I think the writing and the build-up of those two makes the fight the coolest shit ever. Seeing as Gojo tries to do all he can to keep his existence as the strongest because that's all he has left, while Toji just has literally none and just tries to take out the guy that's the strongest so that he would actually matter to the world. Coolest shit ever to me, honestly. And it's because of the writing of the whole dynamic between them, as I talked about in that video. And that's honestly how I feel about that whole discussion and how it was with Daima here. And honestly, the state of modern Dragon Ball isn't really the greatest. I mean, a lot of the writing, I guess, hasn't been the best. You can see it in Super, with the Goku Black arc, with that ending. I don't even need to rewatch that to tell you how bad that is. I mean, Daima at the end does have its weird thing. We've been alluding to it too much. Let's just talk about it. Super Saiyan 4 Goku. How do I feel about him? A mess. He is not a good installment to this at all. If you enjoy him, more power to you. But I think there is a lot of problems with it. First of all, in terms of the aesthetic, this is not really like a writing thing, but I don't really like the design much. My only really complaint is I feel like the hair color should have been a bit different. I don't know, it's just something about the fur and the hair color being the same kind of makes it look a bit bland to me. Maybe if it had the black hair that GT had, maybe I would have enjoyed it more, but that's like a little nitpick there. But in terms of Super Saiyan 4 Goku, he kind of just popped out after Neva gave him the boost or whatever it was, and we got absolutely no explanation for it. And it just kind of happens, right? And, you know, he starts fighting with Goma, and honestly, it does unfortunately feel a lot like Heroes, kind of just random bullshit happens for the sake of transformations and for the sake of selling toys, obviously, because, you know, Dragon Ball has become a thing where a lot of things happen for toys. Beast Gohan happens, you gotta sell a toy, or games in Dokkan, Legends, Spartan Zero, all these games. You know, get Orange Piccolo, we'll get Super Saiyan 4 Goku, we'll get Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. I mean, hey, Xenoverse literally just announced Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, right? That is basically the state of Dragon Ball right now. Despite my complaint on Super Saiyan 4, how, like, bad it is, the transformation at the end of episode 18 is or 19 is amazing. I really love the callback to the Majin Buu scene. He slowly shows the different Super Saiyan forms. It is actually amazing. I cannot lie about that. That is the best transformation scene I've seen probably in Dragon Ball in terms of like production of how it looks. It's not my favorite in terms of the moment, but the way it looks, amazing. No complaints there. But the form is not really that great still. And Super Saiyan 4 Goku just like, he just does not have a place to be there. And speaking of that, I mean, this is still being talked about as I'm making this video, the timeline stuff and how it connects to Super and all this. Personally, I don't think it really matters much. I think Daima is probably its own timeline when you break it down. Maybe you could say it connects to Super, maybe you can't. I'm not really sure how that works especially. But if you really consider it to be a timeline of Super, it doesn't really make sense for Goku to not go Super Saiyan 4 against Beerus, as a lot of people have said, for example. There's a very simple answer. Didn't exist at the time. So that's probably what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if later on we'll get Super Saiyan 4 Goku against, I don't know, whatever happens in Super, whatever happens in another movie. But hey, we'll have to see later on. But my favorite part of the ending, and I think what carried it so much for me, was just Majin Buu being the guy that ended the whole thing. Throwing the book at the back of Goma's head, hitting him 3 times, and just gets the win. I was losing my shit there. It was just amazing. Like, that is the most Toriyama ending I've ever seen. And just seeing how the man gets, as I said earlier, he gets to be the Demon King or the Supreme King, and he just starts to assign everybody being ministers and whatnot. It is an awesome moment to me. I really enjoyed that, and it made the mess that was the final fight a lot better for me. And Ku really just cemented himself as my favorite character of Daima. He's just easily my favorite part of Daima. I mean, the whole ending, honestly, is basically what you'd expect from Toriyama. Goma and Degusu get trapped in that demonic Mafuba, as I'll call it. I forgot what it is. I don't even know if they name it, but it's basically a Mafuba. But they get like a cozy place to chill and play games and do whatever. Just have the time of their life, I guess, and there. As you see in the ending credits. And the fact that the third eyes are for sale, which just means that everything they've been doing is just because the shopkeeper just sold it to someone from like billions of years ago, whatever they said. And what makes Super Saiyan 4 way weirder is the whole reveal that Goku got it by training. Now, him getting it by training does make sense, technically, because he did, to be fair, get Super Saiyan 3 by training, so you can say that Super Saiyan 4 can be acquired by training, because this is not the same Super Saiyan form from GT as far as I'm aware. There's no like giant ape related to it, just an extension of Super Saiyan 3. But it just makes the whole Neva thing pointless. Why did Neva have to give Goku the boost? Couldn't Goku have just gotten it himself? I know that he said he wasn't sure if he could do it, but you probably could have done it way better in that regard. The explanation made it a lot weirder, but at least that made it a bit more sense as opposed to the nonsense that we got. It's still bad, but I think that made it a bit better to me, honestly. And I'm kind of bummed out about Super Saiyan 4 being the big thing of Daima, because as I said earlier, I was really enjoying that Super Saiyan 1 and 2 mattered in the series. You know, Goku and Vegeta were fighting in 1 and 2. 3 I can get behind again, because 3 is barely a thing in Dragon Ball in general after Z. You get it in GT a bit, which is cool, and I really liked seeing it in Daima here from, Super Saiyan 3 Mini Goku. But then when you get 4, and it kind of makes all the other things kind of meaningless, I don't know. Kind of not sure how to feel about that. Yeah, that basically wraps up with Daima. I think we covered everything. I don't think we forgot any points. But if you did like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you disagree with things, feel free to drop comments. I am very open to discuss certain things. Maybe I'm wrong on certain things. Maybe you could change perspectives. Who knows? This is the first anime manga overview that isn't exactly positive, but it is a mix of both. For the rating, I think I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's still a solid series. It's not bad. It has its issues, a lot of it honestly, when it comes to the repetitiveness, and it does show the issue of modern Dragon Ball as a whole with Super Saiyan 4. That basically encapsulates all the problems with, Dragon Ball as a whole right now. Spamming these transformations without really much meaning to it, because Super Saiyan 4 Goku doesn't really have a meaning to existing here. There's no build up to it. There's kind of nothing about it, right? And one thing we'll end on, yes, Super does have the same issue as well. It's not just Daima. Beast Gohan is also not immune to this issue. Evolution Blue Vegeta, let's just not talk about it. I'm not gonna bring him up. But yeah, let me know what you think. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and look out for more content in the future, as we are gonna probably be dropping the Scum's Wish video soon. Not sure when. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.